Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
All right. We've been working our way through this text, and we've been working quite a bit with afflictions, kind of the problem. And I was thinking it might be kind of nice to talk a little bit about the solution. I mean, it's important to understand the issues, right? If we don't recognize the problem, we don't seek help, right? I feel like I'm healthy, I'm not going to the doctor. And so really relevant to notice the ways that we suffer, the afflictions that arise, the worries, the fears, the stress, the angst that we get in our lives. And that's going to propel us to seek some help, right? Whether it's, the metaphor we always use in Buddhism is like a doctor. If you have an illness, you're going to a doctor. The Buddha would be the doctor. The Dharma is the prescription. And then the Sangha is, that whole support team. The, techs and the nurses and so forth. Even the billing clerk, I guess you'd have to put them in there. So, but if I don't know that I'm ill, I usually don't go find things out. I actually just had a friend of mine, went in for one thing and, found out another issue. Actually has a hole in the foot. Might be online, don't know. But it's kind of weird to have a hole in your foot in your bone. And, could be cancerous and, had it all checked out. Turns out it's not. He's okay. But, there's all these underlying things that are going on sometimes that we don't know to check. And often our lives are like that. Our life is pretty good, healthy, don't have a toothache, got some water sitting here, it's a nice day. And so I don't really do much, it's okay, I enjoy my day. And then something happens. And now I'm jolted, and could be a traumatic event, could be just a total change in job or, things that happen, health, so forth. And then it's like, okay, I need to do something. And most people who are sitting in this room or online, at some point you came to a Buddhist teaching because there's been some problems in your lives. We're seeking to not suffer. We're seeking to feel better. When we run mindfulness groups and courses, nobody takes a course because it's a good idea. Just, they don't show up that way. You go around, you ask everyone, why are you here? Going through a divorce, I have this issue, I have some anxiety, I have this, that's why we're in a course. We're working ourselves. So the subtle pieces that come into Buddhism is to recognize there's a much more pervasive thing going on all the time. And we kind of ignore it. It's not that bad. And, I can have a piece of pie later anyway. And so it's not that big a deal. So I don't really work on stuff. And then until something happens. And so these afflictions that we've been working on, they can be really helpful to kind of dig in, kind of see where, I get stuck, see where, what triggers some anxiety or some worry or some fear. But I think one of the things I'm trying to get at here is most of us are pretty acclimated to some degree of stress and some degree of anxiety and some degree of worry. And it just seems like it's okay. And we don't even, imagine what it would be like to not have that. It almost sounds unbelievable. I mean, I've remember Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi, just saying, what would your life be like if you had no anxiety whatsoever? How would you be different? Whoever you met, whatever you did, there's nothing to worry about. You're totally free of any type of anxiety. Really, how would you be different? How would your life? What would that be like? I was like, wow. Don't often think about that. And and his point is that's possible. But I remember throwing that same question out at a big conference with a bunch of therapists, and it was an uncomfortable question, and I couldn't even function without some anxiety or stress, and it's this thing that was just part of our human experience. And so we get accustomed to a way of being, and then we normalize it, and we call it human, and then that's just how we are, and it's not that bad. But there's a different sort of radical hypothesis there, is that you could be free of that. And that's really what the Buddha was looking at. Can you be free of this suffering? Is this necessary? And he came up with an answer. He went and did all his research, tried all the things, tried all the methods out there, got the highest forms of samadhi and meditation. That didn't do it. Tried out the asceticism, didn't do it. And eventually would find the middle way and a path and freedom. And the cornerstone of that, the foundation of that, is that we are much more than our human experience. Right? Our awareness is a gateway into our ultimate nature of self, and that it is obscured, it is layered with our conditionings and our karma and our kleshas, and how we see ourselves as human. And now that's called samsara, our experience in samsara, stuck with karma and cause and effect and our conditioning and so forth. But the point that he's making is that underneath all that, is primordial wisdom. It's never dying. It's never tired. It's all knowing. It is our primordial nature. It's our primordial wisdom. Rigpa is its ultimate nature. And if we clear away the obscurations, we'll discover that. It's a shedding. So it depends on two schools of thought, because we need more numbers. So one of them would be what's typically taught in sort of Nyingma and Kagyu school, which is around Dzogchen and Mahamudra practices that basically fundamentally state you are already Buddha nature. It's already there. You don't have to create anything. You don't have to develop it. You don't have to acquire anything. It is your fundamental nature. All you need to do is discover it. So it's a path of discovery, of letting go of this grasping and clinging and conception. And it's already there. The Gaelic tradition, Sakya, where most of my training had been for many years, is much more of you've got Buddha potential. Like it's there. All you need to do is do these things, merit and wisdom, two accumulations, and those misperceptions about yourself will fade away, and we will accumulate the merit and the wisdom to recognize your Buddha nature. So they often talk about in terms of a path of accumulation or a path of discovery. One's just discovering your nature, and the other is accumulating the merit and wisdom to discover your nature. And then it's funny because you kind of do both in both. It's kind of similar things, right? You got to do ethics, you got to do concentration, you got to do wisdom. But there's a totally different view that you could have. Like from a Dzogchen perspective, would just simply be, you're already Buddha. There's nothing damaged, there's nothing to worry about. All this human stuff will come and go. But that's not who you are, it's how you're experiencing things currently. And that's a very, inspiring, kind of empowering view, right? You might have less anxiety, just saying. And then, there's also, we have the Buddha potential, and the only thing blocking us are these things. We're going to work on these things. So what we've been talking about around afflictions, we keep coming back to at its very core is we're identifying me and mine with that which is not me and mine, right? So I'm identifying a self as John in a way I don't exist. I identify with my personality, I identify with my memories, I identify with my feelings, this body, this is John, very sense, and I'm not Sam, right? And we're different, we're independent, and I'm very independent. Seems that way, right? And I'm pretty sure cherry pie is the source of a lot of my happiness. Okay. I've checked it. Okay. And so in this misperception, there's the things we enjoy, triggers a stimulus, makes me happy, I want more of that, things I don't like, and so I want to avoid. And then I create all my habits and my conditioning around what I like, what I don't like, what I worry about, what's going to bring me happiness. And all of it is relating to an independent self, having these experiences. And if I have these experiences, it leads to happiness. These other experiences lead to suffering. And it's a very external thing. And Buddha is just the opposite. That as I transform inwardly, my karma and my perception, all of this changes. I don't need to make you different. All the people I found annoying won't be annoying to me anymore. So as I change the lens, the obscurations, the karma and the klesha, the lens through which I experience life, as I change karma and view and understanding, how I perceive you is different. How I experience you is different. And so it's all an inside job. Buddhism is basically said to be literally, a Buddhist is an inner worker, right? That's what we do. And if we change this, all that changes. And so with that kind of a view, if we get there, if that makes sense, then there's some very simple things that we can do to discover or acquire wisdom and merit. But we can get caught up in all the afflictions and the list of things and all of this other stuff, and miss the main point that you're already okay, right? And that all the stuff we're going through and the afflictions that show up, the obscurations that arise, are just basically letting you know what to work on, what to let go of. That's all. We're here just for that. And liberation's, always available. It's always there. It's your ultimate nature. Now, that's a nice philosophy. But a nice little talk like that's probably not going to develop any realization of that. So we have to test things, so that's why you always hear me say, anything that's written here, don't take it on face value. You have to go test it. It's either true or it's not true. And you want to challenge it, you want to test it, you want to apply it. It's either going to hold up, it's not going to hold up. And that's the only way to get any real faith, is to actually do it, try it, and see what happens. Do I suffer less? Is the source of my happiness out there, or does it have a lot more to do with me? and how I'm experiencing you and how I engage with you, which is. So we've talked a lot about just, normal Western psychology, which is catching on to a lot of this, kind of noting simple things, what they call now thinking errors, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy, or cognitive distortions, catastrophizing, things like that. And, which is, Buddhism's like, well, yeah, that's all not true. So called thinking errors too. And starting to notice that, that if I really look at my stress, my worries, my fears, and just objectively step back, are they based in reality? Then we might start getting somewhere. I was worried about this relationship or losing this relationship. My life's going to be terrible without it. And then years later, is your life terrible without it? Or now in a new relationship, didn't even know this other person. I mean, I don't want to bring up Jill Miller's name again just because she kicked me to the curb and ruined my life, put me fetal for 3 days and lost the love of my life. But, I'm so over that. But it was so horrible at the time, right? And in the moments, it's horrible. And then you have this belief, the love of your life. Didn't know I'd become a monk. Didn't know all this other stuff would happen. Didn't know I'd meet Laura, and I'd have this other amazing individual I get to spend my life with. None of that was available in my mind at this other time, right? Lost my sister last week. My sister passed away. Lost a brother not too much before that, and so forth. And we lose people, and things get hard. And are we then still incapable of being happy again or not? And where's the suffering? Is the suffering, that I lost a sister, or is the suffering is I don't want to lose a sister? Am I mourning their passing, or am I mourning my loss? Which is, and we can start to think about, well, life and death, kind of the cause for death is birth, right? We all have a terminal illness. It's called life. And, if we start living in reality more and just understanding the nature of things, how much of my happiness has to do with how I'm perceiving or what my attitude is about something versus what's actually happening. And so we can toy around with, what if I perceive something differently and took a different attitude towards it? Where's my real suffering coming from? The event itself or how I'm relating to it? So we can, as we relate to things differently, we might alleviate some suffering. Almost everybody in this room has always heard me say, if you haven't heard it before, there might be one person here, potentially you. When we think we're stuck in traffic versus I am traffic and we're all trying to get somewhere. That's a very different view. I always say that a lot because a lot of people come back to me and say, that really helped me. Because people feel like they're stuck in traffic sometimes, which I find fascinating, because we are the traffic and we're all trying to get somewhere. But just that mental shift is, softens the experience. And then just turn up the radio, get your groove. While trying to have a little time to relax, well, you just got given some time. So what I'm getting at is that we can just consciously, practically start to look at how and why we suffer mentally and emotionally. and consciously start to identify what's the real source. Is it the event, or is it my projection, my attachments, my belief system around these things, or my desires and so forth? And do those desires, are they based in anything true? Right? Cherry pie, by the way, is not the actual source of my happiness. I did test that as well. There's actually sometimes I don't want cherry pie, after the third slice, for example. And if I'm sick, for example. And sometimes just don't have a taste for it, right? So if we can start to get some baseline understanding of how much of our mental emotional suffering is coming from our side and our perspective and our conditioning versus the event, then there can be a legitimate faith. Maybe not a faith in Buddha or Buddhism or any of that, but a faith in an understanding of truth, which, by the way, is the medicine. So the medicine, the Dharma, is truth. The whole principle of Buddhism is to live in reality. And liberation is about wisdom. That's all. The more we live accurately, I am not an independent individual. There's nothing independent about me. There's not a single word that comes out of my mouth that wasn't given to me by somebody that I didn't learn from somewhere. Any knowledge that comes from me that hasn't been given to me in some way that came from somewhere. I mean, there's nothing independent about me. My body didn't even come from me. There's nothing independent about me. Everything about me is interdependent based on, everything: oxygen, water, people I've met, people, just on and on. Well, we don't see our lives that way. We see it very independent. And we think that coffee is delicious. We don't recognize that I'm having a delicious experience because I happen to like coffee and some people don't. Coffee's not delicious. I'm having a delicious experience. That's just more accurate. And then sometimes we don't want coffee, which I find odd. But some people don't. It's odd to me, perspective. So if we play with these a little bit and we start to, ask the bigger questions. So from a Buddhist perspective, our karmic imprints are going to have a lot more to do with whether I find this pleasurable and this adverse. Someone else will find something I find adverse, they'll find it interesting. Something I find pleasurable, someone else doesn't. So it's not in the things. But as I change, something that used to not be pleasurable, I might find pleasurable. I was literally there once when a naturopath, friend of mine, she's like a teacher, like top notch. People come from all over to see her. And I was staying at her house, and she was talking about allergies, and she's making a point that, allergies can come and go. You're not always allergic to something. You can develop an allergy you didn't have before. You can have it and sometimes go. And she says, and you have to test them from time to time. And she says, for example, strawberries. I'm allergic. She was allergic to strawberries. Had been for 10 years or something. And she said, but you need to test. She picked up a strawberry, took a bite, and she goes, actually, I think I'm okay. And then she ate a strawberry, and I think she was, no longer allergic to strawberries. Just, it's different, right? Body changes, things change. It's different. Not allergic to strawberries anymore. So this radical discovery of the Buddha was, as I changed my karma and my imprints, my experience of the world changes. Everything changes. And underneath that experience is your primordial wisdom. That's all knowing, that is not afflicted with anything. And it's never harmed as we get rid of this stuff. This more innate wisdom is just more and more present. But we can't get there by talking about it. We can get there by experimenting a little bit. And, asking different questions. For example, I want to use just a Western person. F. Scott Peck. Anybody ever read F. Scott Peck? Road Less Traveled? Anybody out there? Chris, one guy, you and me, man. We're going to fix a car one day together. That was one of his examples. But, some guy, he was, he's taking a walk and some guy was fixing a lawnmower or something. I'll get close to the story. Might exaggerate it a bit because that helps the story. But he was, seeing this guy fix his lawnmower and he said, wow, it's great you can do that. He said, I'm not very mechanical. The guy looked at him and said, what do you mean you're not mechanical? You just haven't learned things. His whole life, he said, I'm not a mechanical person. I'm not even trying, right? The guy said, no, you could be a mechanic, you just can't learn things. Anybody ever teach you about a lawnmower? No. And so he had this big experience. His emergency brake was stuck on his car. He's like, man, I'm not mechanical. And then he remembered the guy and he said, oh, maybe I'm not. But maybe I can figure this out. So he braves, he's bold, he looks underneath where the emergency brake is. And he pokes around, hits the thing, and voila, emergency brake releases. He's a master mechanic. Just like that. And the story illustrates how much of our life we have a belief system about ourselves that's limiting. I'm not this kind of person. I'm not that kind of person. I mean, for years, I was not a morning person. I guess the hardest thing I do all day is get out of bed. It's just wrong. And I used to have set 2 alarms. I used to have some on the other side of the room. And I could still have doze and go back. It was pretty bad. I thought I was not normal. Maybe I wasn't. Today, normally I get up at 4 a.m., right? Not a morning person. I'm a morning person. So all of this to say that the fundamental basis of Buddhism is saying we identify me and mine with that which is not me and mine. I don't exist in the way I keep labeling myself, my personality, my stuff. I'm not angry. I'm experiencing some anger. And so simple ways that we can start to recognize as we feel some anxiety or as we feel some stress, can we challenge the belief system? If this doesn't happen, if you're going to be late. Has anyone here ever been late for an appointment? 2 of us, great. So it's stressful, right? And yet we've been late for appointments countless times. And somehow we've survived. And probably still been able to have some cherry pie later. And so we'll still get pretty stressed about that next one. I'm late, right? Totally missing the point that I've been late 100 times. Because, I was trafficked. And yet we get worked up. What if we just go, apparently I'm going to be late. And we'll see what happens. But the belief system, the conditioning that we need to be here at this time, we need to be here like that, this has to happen. We'll see all the stress, all the worry, all the fear. And yet we've actually, all the things that we've feared or worried about or stressed over, so many times they've already happened. We've been late, we've broken something, we've had an injury, we've had someone die, we've had a job loss, Jill Miller's kicked us to the curb. I mean, these things have happened. I guess that was me on that one. She probably dumped other guys. So anyway, it might be a club. She did call me 20 years later. She had her chance. So, what were we talking about? Just kidding. Jill Miller again. Yeah, she has a new name. So, if we sit here and think about this Buddhist path, then is there a way we can start testing this? And can we have a little more access to our innate wisdom? And a lot of people, sometimes they talk about their conscience, like we kind of know what the good thing to do is, but I'm not doing it, or I am doing it, or I can't not do the harmful thing because I'm driven to do this other thing, to not park in the hybrid section when I have a hybrid car. By the way, I did notice someone parking there without a hybrid car. I was very certain of that. And but some people, that's not a big deal. Other people are rule followers, right? I'm kind of a rule follower today. So uncomfortable, I don't want to do that. So what if we started noticing stress, noticing anxiety, noticing these afflictions, and then ask the question, is this based on anything true? Will I be okay if I'm late? Will this be okay if this happens? And what if I approached it as an opportunity to grow, to understand myself, to be of benefit? And then this whole thing, maybe I could say, is whole experience is an opportunity to develop myself and wisdom and be of benefit to others. Would you suffer this? You can test that out. This was quite a prelude to a simple thing I wanted to talk about. But I think if we don't have that framework, we can miss something. I don't expect people to believe that they have primordial wisdom that is all-knowing and that that's your nature. I don't even think it's a good idea to believe that. I think it's a good idea to explore that. And so one of the little simple things that I've mentioned, more than once here is it's just a little simple exercise. When we're struggling, we don't know what to do. A very simple question. Taking a few breaths and just asking, what would be a healthy thing to do in this situation? Not what should I do? I is not involved. John's not involved. Just objectively in this situation, what would be a healthy thing to do? I've had people in early recovery ask that question. I've had people in very difficult traumatic situations ask that question. And almost every single time, if it's asked properly, with some calm, there's a great answer. Well, a healthy thing to do would be this. You go, well, where'd that come from? Wasn't your ego, because your ego maybe doesn't want to even do that, not even interested. Or my emotions are triggered, it's not asking that. But when we just simply ask a question in this situation, whatever it is, what would be a healthy thing to do? Generally, there's a pretty good answer available. As long as I'm not asking what I should do. As soon as I put that in there, it gets messy, but just objectively. And so is that potentially a way that we can start accessing our own innate wisdom? I think it's a pretty good idea. I do that frequently. And then sometimes I don't do what I should, would be the healthy thing, but that's a different thing. But what if we were to know that you always have a guiding dear friend available? It's already within. And my job is to stop obscuring that with my desires, my worries, my fears, my things. and start listening more. And then there becomes a very interesting skill, which is different from the skill that most of us have refined quite well, which is the skill of listening to a critical voice in my mind about what I'm not good at, what I'm, ill-equipped to do, and, all my defects of character. Really good voice there. That's a good listener, which is all part of the egoic conventional mind, which is very different from listening to this other wisdom, this other aspect that generally has a pretty good answer and will never tell you you're an idiot. It might say that was probably not the brightest thing to do, but we can learn from it, John, and do that. So I've been reflecting on this a lot, just because I think a lot of times we get caught up on practices and inner work and things I need to do and things I'm not that good at, and not really recognize that the work is actually letting go of that stuff, and that you are already good, that you're already okay. And these obscurations and afflictions that show up are literally your lesson plan. Things I'm going to work on. My misunderstanding, my exaggerations, my projections. And that every event in my life is an opportunity to learn, to grow, to be helpful. And so what I was going to talk about, which I'll just simply hit, is every single day that we do Dharma teaching, I invite those who'd like to join me in a refuge prayer. And we say these words: I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So some people, I always say I invite you, because you might not be taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, I don't know, the Buddha or whatever, wherever we're at. And the Dharma and the Sangha. A refuge is something that I can rely upon. It's safe, it's dependable. And so, so maybe we're not there with this. But maybe if we recognize the Dharma is the truth, well, maybe I can take refuge in the truth. That could be helpful. And take refuge in the truth. And then it takes this other piece here, through the positive potential that I create by practicing the 6 perfections: generosity, ethics, patience, choice, effort, concentration, and wisdom, is the actual Bodhisattva path. Those 6 things. That's how one becomes a Buddha. Cultivating these 6 things. So I was sitting here thinking, often people read this, but they don't realize that in these 2 sentences, the path to awakening is right there. Ultimate nature of truth, the teachings of freedom, and the path is having cultivated generosity. Generosity, the antidote to attachments, ignorance. Ethics, which is the source of all happiness and well-being. Patience, the antidote to anger, the ability to endure. Joyous effort, that motivation to make good use of your life. Concentration, to tame the mind so it's not scattered and afflicted all the time and jumping from one to another. And then wisdom, to actually know who you are. So I was going to give a talk about that. But I think I just did. If I can focus on understanding that There's something that's reliable, something that's safe, something that's dependable, like the truth. True causes of happiness, true causes of suffering, and I can work with that a little bit. And then have some actual faith built upon experience. Then I'll have a good foundation to be cultivating these 6 perfections. And it's not a complicated thing. I think we can all work on generosity, and generosity is not just, making a donation and all that, though. Please do. Generosity of time. Did I give someone my attention? Generosity in that way, our time, our energy, and our ethics, our virtue, kindness, so forth. And so my encouragement this week, rather than talk more about afflictions, I was thinking about, let's kind of work on developing a practice around noticing fear, anxiety, or any afflictions when they arise, and questioning them. Can you recognize that you're going to be okay? Which is different from, someone shooting a gun at you. That's right. Can have a lot of good ethics and still get shot. So not physical pain of samsara, but rather the mental and emotional anguish around the events themselves. And how attached I am to this or that happening, so I'll be happy. Or this or that not happening, so I'll be okay. And instead of just doing my best, understanding that things are unfolding in ways I have no idea about. But everything's an opportunity for me to understand myself and to use this life well. So I'm going to pause there, since somebody has to dive out at 7. And just check in, see if anyone has any questions, comments, or no, I think questions or comments, basically, that would be it. We don't have Kurt here. Chime in. Carla's got a raised hand. It's going to make a comment. Yeah. I mean, a comment.
So you talk pretty often about, asking yourself the question, what would the healthy thing be to do? And so I've tried it, and for some reason, I don't come up with much of an answer.
You're killing my whole thought.
Most, if not all of the time. But I usually just kind of fall back to doing nothing rather than doing something that could potentially be harmful. But that often I feel like I'm, allowing a destructive behavior to continue because I can't come up with an answer to that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is it a reoccurring similar situation you're talking about?
Sometimes, yeah. And I kind of, based on your explanation tonight, I'm maybe assuming that I've still got a little bit too much ego involved in trying to answer that question.
Yeah, that's it.
Which kind of like that did turn a little bit of a light bulb on, for sure, because I can kind of see that in play.
Yeah, and that's the key, is to get ourselves out of the answer. It can't be what I would like to have happen. It can't even be, seeing like a peaceful, like if it's a harmful thing, seeing a peaceful outcome. We're not there for any outcome. It's in this specific situation, given full acceptance to the persons involved and the environment and the understanding. Simply asking, in this situation, objectively, would be a healthy thing to do. And if it's people close to us and situations like that, sometimes it's very hard to get ourselves out of that question. because we still would like a certain outcome.
But wouldn't sometimes doing nothing be quite possibly the healthy?
Absolutely. Sometimes the healthy answer is, I don't have a better answer, so I'm doing nothing. Right? That could be a healthy thing. Yeah. And yeah, as a matter of fact, in my life, a lot of times not doing something is a very healthy answer. Yeah. Yeah. So something to work with, Carla.
And sometimes I wonder if there's a couple different healthy options.
Oh yeah.
And how do you, I guess you test them, if this is the healthy thing, and I mean, not being attached to an outcome, but wait and see what happens, and then plan B.
Right. It all works the best the more we can get out of the way, right? And but yeah, sometimes, yeah, a couple of healthy options. But then sometimes we get, well, what do I do? Right? A lot of people agonize over decisions. I don't agonize over decisions. I figure I can't make an incorrect one. Because whatever decision I made at that moment was the best I had at that moment. In hindsight, I could make a better decision. And so it's whatever decision I made was, was what was unfolding. And so, there's a, because then we have a fantasy, like if I'd have done this other thing, it would be different. So if things were different, it would be different, which I guess is true. But then we make up a story about how it would have worked out differently. And it always came out better. But I don't make up a story about if I'd have done this other thing, I'd have got killed by a serial killer. That's not part of my story, right? But it could have happened. In other words, it never happened. It's all in my mind had I made the other decision. And so it's amazing how we can ruminate on if only I'd done this, then this and this, and this would have happened, which is all a story in my mind because none of those things happened because I never did that. And I don't know if I had made this other decision, I'd get hit by a car. I don't know. A whole another series of events would happen. But how much of our lives do we spend thinking, made this or made that, rather than in the moment, best choice I made was this. And then you learn from it. Example. Personal too. You guys ready for something personal? Okay, don't tell anyone outside of this room. So I was a pretty unhealthy marriage and went to therapy, did all that, and it was very clear. You need to get out of this. It's not going to work. And nothing I could say is going to change anything. Nothing I do is going to change anything. I got that. So I did all the things and I moved out of the house and we got a little duplex, myself and my daughter, in a simple place. And then one day she shows up and she literally told me all the things that I've always wanted her to say, like validated my feelings. She had this great insight, understood all the issues, told me everything I wanted to hear. It was like, boy, you want to talk about getting hooked. Like, oh, I've been waiting for this for years. Like, it's all clear. And of course, part of me knows that it may not be so clear tomorrow, and I didn't know what to do. So I decided I'm going to turn it over to, I'm going to flip a coin. I'm going to let it all go. Flip a coin. Heads, taking her back. Tails, no, we're staying on this. It came up. Don't take her back. And you know what I did? Let's give it one more time. Because that's what I wanted. And yeah, it turned out miserably. Yeah, worse than I could imagine. And so that's where we can kind of see how, not that everybody should flip the coin, but the point being how much our own emotions and entanglements and patterns can get in the way of a healthy decision, because it really wasn't, the coin flip was unnecessary. I'd already done all the work, right? It was clear. My ego was trying to find a way back to making something happen that wasn't going to be okay. But, what came out of that then wasn't a bad decision. What came out of that was a big learning experience, which led to a massive depression for months, which ultimately led to me learning how to meditate and having the most transformative year of my life, and learning how to be okay with just me and my own skin, and get involved in these teachings, and would eventually, wind up being a Buddhist monk and all kinds of things. So it wasn't a bad decision. It was just a decision, right? That provided me all the things I needed to go through. But a lot of people could lament a decision like that, right? How do I relate to that decision? Got me best year of my life after some of the most emotional pain of my life. So, but if we understand samsara is like that, and that we are limited in our conditioning, then we can see what we get to learn. All right, Greta.
Hey, thanks for that. Oh man, that really hit home. So helpful. And the thing about
You flipped the coin too,
close enough, 4 times actually.
huh?
Yeah, and the last time, was the big old egg crack open. But I was thinking it's so helpful the like not I. Like what would be a healthy thing to do and not I am like, wow, yeah, like that takes my like little ego seed motivation out of it. But I was wondering, oh my God, I just lost my question. Hold on. I might have to come back to it. It was a good one too, but I had to like go on and on about the other thing. But I will say that also, I guess I'm just like saying affirming statements at this point, that the taking refuge in the truth. It's like, yeah, because I got out of that like incredibly similar painful relationship 8 months ago, and have been like meditating and blah blah blah, and it's been really helpful. And yet still, occasionally this overpowering urge to like still seek to like get back on a dating app, and just like get out there prematurely, like this urgency comes up. And then I just found it very helpful to like, when confused and doubtful, just like take refuge in the truth. Like, what is the truth? The truth is, if it's urgent, it's probably not good, you know? Like if I feel like I need something, there's probably like more to it than I can see right now. So I guess I'll just leave it there. If my question comes back to me, I'll say something else. Thank you.
Thanks, Greta. That's good comments. Good reflection. And actually, I think we'll wrap up now. It's starting to be a sweat box in this room here. We don't not have AC here. So I think a good note to wrap up on. So I'm going to invite people to take a look at that refuge and these 6 perfections, and just see if we can find a refuge in the truth. See if we can notice my anxiety related to something that I'm exaggerating, and see if that doesn't help guide us. And if it does seem valuable, asking that question about what's healthy. It's a bit of a skill. Let's go ahead and dedicate the merit and wisdom that we have already developed. Those of you sitting in this hot room developed like twice as much merit as those other people in the AC. So a lot to dedicate. But it's nice to recognize that supporting each other, coming together, of all the things we could be doing on Wednesday night, we are making a huge difference in ourselves and others, in the world that we live in as well. We can dedicate this merit for the benefit of all beings and for our own continued spiritual growth. And those who care to join. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare